Now we know about all the dangers and resources of Rubia, let's start looking at how we're making use of them and how the science works here. Welcome to Laurence Plays Factorio Planetary Pioneers for a look into an enforced one-way bus system. Science on Rubia is largely done by throwing specific items up in the air and watching what happens to them. They tend to get caught by the wind and just disappear. So we've spent a lot of time building up supplies of those specific items and then launching them from the crapperpulls. First on the list was the standard yellow firearm magazine. Well, at least those are easy to make. You saw last week how we were processing the ferric scrap with some bacteria and getting out a stream of copper cables and yellow mags. Launching 300 of these taught us about extracting the iron from these magazines and also about how to produce a makeshift biorecycling pack. Lovely! The next step was to yeet 1,000 of those makeshift packs, so it was time to try some automation. These, much like the green science packs on Norvis, are made from two very important machines for the planet. But rather than pushing you towards automating the manufacture of belts and inserters, this one encourages you to stop pocket crafting wind turbines and bioreactors. Nobody has the patience to do 1,000 of each of those. And so, Mark set up resource production, generating a couple of belts of ammo to be shredded into its component iron, along with a stream of the copper cable byproduct. This time, we're not throwing all the copper away. It's being combined with the iron to make green circuits, and more of it is being used to making the wind turbines. You can see we've got priority set on these splitters, and that's because the excess is actually getting yeeted. Getting enough iron means getting a big surplus of copper, and we don't have constructive uses for it all. This copper surplus is exacerbated even further because the top machines aren't even providing ammo for iron. They're having it taken away for another ammo belt running along the top of the factory, with spurs down into the middle to keep the interior safe. Yes, Rubia defences are still weird. In the middle, a lot of that iron is getting turned into steel, and at the time, producing enough steel was a major challenge. However, further lob search and develop Yeet allowed us to find another way of making steel, which has been a great help, although still not enough to stop the steel production. Maybe these chests should have been limited, even this one with the silly stack sizes from hot metal cooling. With all these basic materials available, I dropped in what now seems like an excessive number of assemblers in order to make the biorecyclers and wind turbines. These were combined here, along with some sludge, to produce the makeshift science packs, which I believe were fed directly into a crapperpult for science, which has now been removed for tidiness. This unlocked hardcore biorecycling and a slew of production chains, including the blue Junkibacter to complement the red Scrapophilius. Hooray! New gunge! And so, further progression was made. This took us into the incremental part of the planet's tech tree, where we use the bacteria to decompose something to make something else, and then yeet a load of it to unlock the next step. This started with us combining the red bacteria and red ore to get blue circuits and engine units. The blue circuits could be then broken down by blue bacteria into red circuits and light oil, and these vital resources allowed Sophia to start producing locomotives and rocket fuel, an intriguing combination. Whenever you have a process that produces two outputs, one of them is going to be produced in excess and need to be disposed of. This time it was the red circuits, so we piped them into a crapperpult. Looking at production, blue circuits seem to be an oversupply as well. Most of the biorecyclers are stalled because of an excess of them, so maybe this is another planet that could or should be exporting blue circuits to Vulcanus and anywhere else where they're expensive to make. At this point, we were ready for Sophia to start making the next science pack, the Ghetto Biorecycling Pack, which I guess is more advanced than the Hardcore Pack. The required ingredients are certainly more difficult to produce. When produced, these were, you guessed it, passed into a crapperpult for further yeeting, at least until we'd launched enough that the recipe was made unavailable. This gave us further bio breakdown ideas, the joy of Craptonite shenanigans, and the real version of the Biorecycling Pack. This is definite progress, even if it's a bit convoluted. There's a clear pattern emerging here. The bacteria are dissolving chunks of the scrap ore to give us various resources, and in some cases can nibble a bit further to convert those resources into even more basic versions. It's a bit like Fulgora, but a bit more targeted thanks to the biological inputs. The next system, put together by Tristan though, is rather different. It's a bit more complex, but a lot more useful. This one takes in both types of ore and both types of bacteria, and in a Scrapapalooza produces a bit of almost everything. This list looks pretty similar to the resources we were gathering from the Rex Spidertrons, although it is missing out a few things like the construction bots and the modules, and so this has meant we can finally stop going out scavenging for resources. As long as we run this system quickly enough, we can maintain a steady supply of all the parts we need to keep expanding the factory. These supplies are being put into red chests and then unloaded to be disposed of when we have an excess of them, and that's working very nicely. We can now fully automate construction because we have all the required buildings in red chests. Hooray! The gun turrets are also being passed off along a belt so Tristan can produce a supply of the sniper turrets. These are many times better than the normal turrets as we discussed last week, so we're interested in getting a good supply of them up and running, and also starting to export them so that other planets can benefit as well. This is one of the rewards Rubia has for us, and we expect them to be extremely useful, potentially changing how spaceships are defended, and definitely helping us on any planet with remotely tough enemies. My next challenges were to start making concrete and then Craptonite frames. This started off with another bacterial disassembly, this time turning the red ore into red ammo and rails. This was very exciting. The red ammo would allow the turrets to do so much more damage with each shot, although the sniper turrets are already happily two-shotting the trash droids, so perhaps it's a bit unnecessary, but the opportunity was there, and so it seemed rude not to. This was immediately piped out to the turret's downwind of production. However, there was clearly an opportunity for some improvement here, so we stuck a pin in this idea to come back to. The real requirement here was to start producing concrete, and that comes from recycling the rails. Clearly, concrete is an integral part of rails, even though they're initially made from stone and steel normally. Let's not worry too much about the details. This also produced a quantity of steel, which makes sense, and we dumped that out onto the bus for use further along. Mark is then pulverising a lot of the concrete along with some biogoop to produce the local type of concrete mix, some of which went into making rocket silos, but most of it is being used to manufacture the next building along, the very Australian sounding Garbo Grabber. This tech heralds a big change. The Garbo Grabber is pretty much the opposite of the Craptonite. Whenever a trash droid gets destroyed inside its catchment area, it will grab the remains out of the air with its powerful tractor beam, allowing it to be unloaded onto a belt and sent away for processing. It's important to note that the trash droids have to be destroyed by physical damage for there to be anything left to grab. If we just shoot them down with our personal lasers, or with laser turrets, the Craptonite is lost. And so, we now have a belt running pretty much the length of the factory, with an array of grabbers picking up any Craptonite that's produced there. Tristan then set up some assisted frothing to convert the Craptonite chunks into the more usable brown froth. I've no idea what this recipe is intended to convey, but it's using that bacterial goop again, so it must be powerful. This froth is then cast in concrete, producing the neat cylindrical frames, and some spare concrete as a byproduct. Yes, only about half the concrete actually gets consumed, the rest is released. This is a bit of a problem, since we can't pass it back into the input to recycle thanks to the wind. This is definitely going to be a problem. We don't want to just throw half the concrete away, because it's a struggle to make it quickly enough as it is. Still, we have some Craptonite, so let's do something exciting with it, like having Tristan making the science packs properly. This feels like a fairly logical expansion of the previous recipes, using locomotives and turbines from the earlier designs, but then adding in the Craptonite frames and some light oil to lube it all together. You've probably noticed that there's two outputs though. Yes, this recipe returns 75% of the Craptonite frames unused. That means if we don't find a way to return those to the inputs, we'll be wasting more than 80% of the concrete. We are making a lot, but not enough to just throw it away like that. We could, I suppose, have additional machines using it after the first set, take the unused Craptonite and pass it onto another column. That would mean instead of 75% passing through undigested, we'd only have a bit over half. And then a third column would bring that down to about 40%, and then so on and so on. But no matter how many columns we put in, we'd still be losing a bit at the end. Does that matter? Well, we'd end up needing to defend a larger area, so we'd end up churning through more ammo, which is not ideal, and it's also a bit gross as building solutions go. It's not a nice way to fix the problem. You'll be happy to hear that there is an answer to this conundrum. One of the techs unlocked by making some Craptonite frames is the poo tube train. Yeah, I swear this mod author is even more puerile than I am. Anyway, this produces the very aerodynamic armoured locomotive, cargo wagon and fluid wagon, something that can finally resist the winds of Rubia. These locos have a much higher fuel consumption to the standard ones, 100 times greater, although with a 20% efficiency, giving them 12 megawatts of acceleration power. They're also 5 times heavier, so I guess that means they'll accelerate 4 times as quickly, and they do also have a 50% higher top speed, at least according to the stats, so they certainly zip around. Now that we have trains that can not only brave the winds of Rubia, but also travel to the left through them, Mark wasted no time in setting up a train loop to collect the resources that are made further right than they're used, and then bring them back to the very start of the bus. Over here, they can be unloaded and then returned to where they're needed. The tricky part of this is to ensure we prioritise everything correctly. The obvious answer is that the recycled stuff should always be the priority, and I think that's probably always the correct answer too, but there are some places where we need to get rid of steel because it's an unwanted byproduct, and similarly, recycled Craptonite from the science production needs to be taken away, or the outputs will jam up. Keeping this balanced is going to be a challenge, and it's one we haven't actually solved yet. Since less will come out of the science production that goes in, we should be okay prioritising that output, and making sure the production of new crap is at a lower priority. As long as there's enough buffer space, I think we should be okay there. The steel, on the other hand, we might need to start yeeting that if it gets out of hand. I want to say that now we've got a proper science pack, it's just a case of loading it into rockets and taking it away to our normal labs on normal Norvis, but no, there is still more yeeting to be done. In order to get off planet, we need to yeet 1,000 of the bio-recycling packs to unlock Project Trash Dragon, giving us Rubian rocket silos and Rubian rockets. This we did, Tristan built up some rocket silos, and then the first rockets emerged. Let's just say they look a bit like chocolate Santas and move on, shall we? Yes. The rockets themselves come together pretty easily using things we've already made in quantity, and as you can see, we've got an array of them with different exports. At the bottom, the science packs. We're going to need a decent number of those. Then Craptonite, since that's an important resource from this planet, and I suspect it will be very useful in the future. We then have rocketizer chests, and I'll talk about them a bit more next week when we look into some other Rubian unlocks. And then there's those lovely sniper turrets. All in all, there's quite a bit on this planet, and we're going to take at least some of it away. And with that, we've reached the end of the bus, so I guess that must be the end of the episode. There's been some upgrading, some improving, and some researching that I haven't covered yet, so that will be in next week's episode, which may well be the last one about Rubia, at least for a little while, like until we have to come back because one of the resource patches that's making ammo has run out and everything's got wrecked. That will be next Friday as normal, so please make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. If you'd like to give Rubia and everywhere else a try yourself, you can grab the Planetary Pioneers mod from the mod portal. Use the seed 11111 to get your own copy of our solar system, continents and all. I'll be streaming again on Monday at 7:30 PM UK time. We'll be on another planet by then, so make sure you check it out. And we'll have a non-Factorio stream on Wednesday at 8 as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.